We've been working on this concept of ARAs, which stands for Reciprocal Watershed Agreement, or Acuerdos Recíprocos por Agua in Spanish, since about 2003, when we initiated the concept in a municipality called Pampa Grande in the Rio Los Negros. We initially designed the idea around the concept of payments for environmental services. Basically, downstream users of water pay upstream service providers, people who live upstream, for the services they're providing and help them protect the forests where they live. But we quickly realized that this idea of markets for environmental services and payments and just a simple word use and the concept of people paying for something that they've always had, they think is a service from God or a human right. The idea of paying for that, the concept that might be taken away from them, just didn't make any sense in our culture, in the Andean culture. So we slowly evolved the concept to think more about reciprocity and how people who live in a watershed need to work together, to use the resources together, so joint co-responsibility and a joint benefit sharing of the values of the watershed services. So since starting in 2003 with 6 upstream landowners protecting about 600 hectares, we are now working in 31 municipalities in Bolivia, 84,000 hectares under conservation agreements with about 2,000 families. And these families, in return for agreeing to protect these 83,000 hectares, are receiving beehives, bee boxes to produce honey, fruit tree seedlings, a barbed wire to help manage their cattle, irrigation systems, by drip irrigation systems to improve the productivity of agriculture. And the idea is that as they get these alternatives to slashing and burn forestry, slash and burn agriculture, they can then stop destroying the forest and stop deforesting, and hence help provide the environmental services. But the downstream users, although they are paying in cash an additional amount on their monthly water bill, the contribution to go upstream is never in cash, it's always in development projects, so it provides an alternative development strategy for people. The reason this is interesting for climate compatible development is that by protecting the upper watersheds where the old growth forest is, we're helping mitigate climatic. By shifting people away from annual agriculture, which is very dependent on rainfall, to alternative production systems such as honey production or fruit trees, which are less dependent on rainfall, we're helping them adapt to climate change. And also by protecting their water sources, they're adapting to climate change. And then the third component is by getting local downstream institutions such as municipal governments and the water users themselves to pay for this, we're basically getting long-term financing for climate compatible development. It's a very simple model which doesn't require economic analysis, doesn't require opportunity cost analysis, doesn't require values, because basically we're not appealing to the economic interests necessarily of the participants. We're appealing to the idea that everyone who lives in the watershed needs to contribute to managing the watershed, but also will jointly receive the benefits of the watershed. Many people want to conserve their forests. Many people would love to conserve their forests. They just don't have the economic help to do it, but more importantly, they don't have the institutional structure to allow them to figure out, for example, how do everyone who live downstream, how do they all get together and contribute to upstream conservation? And once they are contributing, how can they trust the upstream people? What's missing is not economics and money, what's missing is the institutional structure. So what we focus on is building that institutional structure or helping local institutions strengthen so they can get together and work on this concept of reciprocity between upstream and downstream. The big difficulty in this is how do you get a system which is by design working small scale, working with individual landowners. We know the names and surnames of everyone in our system. How do you scale up to affect millions of hectares? And so basically what we're thinking and what we're working on with various partners is to figure out how to take that at scale, basically not by scaling up by working on thousands of hectares watershed, but basically replicating. So we go from one municipality to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. What we're doing with partners such as RARE partners in other countries such as in Colombia, Peru, and Ecuador, is working to help them replicate the model. And what we found really interestingly is, although we thought this model might only work in mid-altitude Bolivian communities, with working with partners, it's now spread to Colombia, Ecuador, and Peru, and seems to be working very well in another about 20 or so municipalities across these countries. On top of that way of replicating by scaling by replication, we're working to basically fit each of these individual small-scale schemes under like an umbrella of a higher level. So we help create water funds, such as for the city of Santa Cruz, the town of El Torno, which is a municipality in Bolivia. So within El Torno municipality, which is the overarching water fund, the 7 smaller water funds working within that. And then above the El Torno water fund, there's the city of Santa Cruz water fund. So we're still staying very small scale for the component parts, but they're nested within umbrella organizations that literally can go up to the regional scale. And so getting the financing from large cities who are using waters a lot further downstream, or agricultural producers, irrigators, soy producers, rice producers, the big scale agriculturalists downstream. So they put into water fund, and that the interests, or the interest, or maybe some other funds that come from that water fund can then go, but critically important is that then goes down to the local water fund upstream and is managed at a micro level. So we keep that relationship between the implementers of the fund and the provider of the service, getting the financing, much bigger finance from outside. We end up in Bolivia, basically our current cost structure in terms of the marginal cost per hectare is it costs us about $4 per hectare per year. And of those $4, about $3 of those dollars go to the individual landowner. So it's costing us about $1 to manage the whole program, and $3 of the incentives that go to people. So basically, an individual landowner will receive $3 worth of goods per hectare conserved. And of course, of those $3, as I mentioned, we're getting about $2.50 of them from the local water users and the municipal governments. So that means every $4 we spend, $1.50 comes from donors, and of that $1.50, $1 is covering my costs, the institution's cost, the administrative cost. 50 cents of the donor contribution is then matched with about $2.50 from local resources, and that goes directly to the landowner to provide honey production, fruit tree production, irrigation, etc., etc. Very, very cost effective, and we find it's a model that people can understand, and it's very easy for people to copy and replicate. The important investment that CDCAN made in our program is to give us the space to actually research and figure out what's working, what's not, and how to improve it. And so from our partners from Rare Conservation, from Natura-Bolivia, and all our local partners, thank you very much for this funding, and it's really helped us as we try and go forward and replicate and scale up ARAs across the world.